I'm glad everyone's enjoying their meals. Hopefully you've had a chance to eat. I want to start by saying welcome. Thank you for joining us as we kick off this year's Breaking Bread and Barriers series. Certainly on behalf of OneJax and our board, thank you for being here. The series was created last year. We kicked it off with a pretty simple idea in mind. When we share a meal, we can also share our stories, our perspectives, and a little bit of our humanity. In doing so, we're able to bridge divides that sometimes feel impossible to cross. So this is our second year that we've come together around a theme. Last year we did the Pledge of Allegiance and broke down the Pledge of Allegiance. And this year we are entering this season around the theme, Humanity in the Age of Information. So we'll have three sessions, and we kick off tonight with a session on social media. So by a show of hands, how many of you feel that social media has impacted the way that you talk about important issues with family, friends, or coworkers? Yeah, me too. All of us are like reliving this reality in real time as social media starts to really take over how we engage with people. It's shaping the way that we connect, it's shaping the way that we disagree, the way that we form community, and we are not alone in this. In fact, recent polls show that 253 million people in the US, that's nearly 3/4 of our entire population, use social media. For teens, it's almost universal. 90% of teens are using YouTube, and half are using TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. Even half of a demographic that was slow to adopt, those in their 50s and 60s, are now active social media users. No age group is untouched. We are living in a world where information doesn't just flow, it floods us. Our phones, our feeds, and our screens are with us every moment, shaping how we see the world and how we see one another. The problem isn't access to information anymore. Unfortunately, the challenge is making sense of the information. How do we separate distortion from truth? How do we resist the pull toward outrage and division? New research out of MIT shows that false news spreads 6 times faster than truth on Twitter. Outrage and emotionally charged stories are far more likely to go viral than calm and fact-based ones. It's no surprise then that 64% of Americans say that social media has a mostly negative effect on the way that things are going in our country. And we reached a new tipping point. Analysis from Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism shows that social media has overtaken TV as the main source of news for 54% of Americans. That means that more of us are getting our information not from traditional newsrooms, Dan Rather, but from our feeds curated by algorithms, sometimes from influencers with no journalistic background. And that's why civil discourse matters so much right now. Listening with curiosity, speaking with respect, engaging across differences, these aren't just polite luxuries for the privileged. These are survival skills for democracy and for the human connection that hold our communities together. And that's the tension that we're going to struggle with here tonight. These platforms have transformed how we communicate, giving voice to many who were once unheard, but they've also created echo chambers, amplified polarization, and eroded trust. So tonight, let's ask together, how can we reclaim these tools as tools for connection instead of division? How can we hold on to our humanity in an age of algorithms? What role can each one of us play in creating a healthier, more civil conversations online and offline? Before I dive in, I have to say thank you to the people who make our series possible. First and foremost, our OneJax staff. Thank you so much for your steadfast commitment to our vision and values. And then, of course, thank you so much for floating around here. I also want to acknowledge our sponsors for our program this season, Fisher Towsey, Do Good Communications, and WJCT. It's without their generosity, we wouldn't be able to ensure that we can gather in spaces like this and have these kinds of conversations about breaking bread and breaking barriers. So, I'm going to join this table over here of esteemed guests. Welcome. Thank you. We have a little different setup. So the idea for this conversation is that we get to model what the civil discourse looks like. You get to hear about the subject matter, and then you practice it at your table. So we'll start our conversation. We'll go over some ground rules for the evening, and then you'll have a chance to dive in with the table mates. If you end up, people are still kind of trickling in, but if you feel like you end up at a table that isn't quite full, feel free to come by if you need to. All right, now let me introduce these fine people that are with me tonight. I'm going to start with John Filson in the center here. John is a content creator with a background in conflict resolution. He's worked alongside community leaders in Iraq and Central America, trying to prevent violence and poverty. Thanks. He's mentored homeless teenagers in Hollywood, coordinated advocacy programs in Washington, created courses in peace building, and helped organizations use social media for change. He has a master's in international peace studies from Notre Dame University. Charmaine here to my left. Charmaine Martinez is the founder of Do Good Communications, a Jacksonville-based digital marketing agency that helps nonprofits, schools, and community organizations amplify their impact. She studied creative writing right here at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts, and journalism at the University of North Florida. For more than a decade, she has led bilingual advocacy, fundraising, and social media campaigns that mobilize hundreds of supporters and has raised thousands in single-day digital drives. And she's helped pass local referendums that have brought millions into Northeast Florida's public schools. And then last but certainly not least, the Reverend Dr. John Newman is a dedicated and experienced senior pastor, teacher, counselor, and leader with a history of empowering individuals to strive for personal growth and betterment. He has a proven track record of providing leadership and guidance to business organizations on a local and national scale. He's actively involved in social justice movements, political campaigns, and disaster relief efforts. He's a skilled communicator with a passion for serving others and a long list of lots of things that he has done that I won't list for you here, but I certainly welcome each of our guests to share with you all as we go some of the incredible work that you've done in this space. All right, without further ado, let's hop into it. So Reverend Newman, can you start off by helping us understand, I know you've done some work in FBI, doing hate speech. You can tell me better the task force that you were on, but can you help us understand some of the real world consequences of what it is to be online on social media?
Yes, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of this great event tonight. The work that I did with the Jacksonville FBI, the Multicultural Engagement Committee, we sought to find out where the pain points were in various communities, particularly from what's happening as a result of people being online. And it was pretty ugly. A lot of the social pathology we see really has a direct link from online activity. We discovered, for instance, that a lot of the hate that's going on, particularly in our area, that it's children being recruited as young as 10 years old to start the pattern of hate. And all the intentionality from the beginning, I'm being generous when I say that, was for connectivity, for people to know other people from a global village. It's become terribly toxic, to where people have substituted the virtual as real, not recognizing that a virtual friend is not necessarily a real friend, confusing that. And substituting the replacement of the tactile and the touch that triggers our oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine, the good stuff, right? And you can't get that exactly the same way virtually. You can get it, but the levels are much lower. And as a result, we've become disconnected. We've become silos. People have built their own ecosystems of where they think truth is and are so wrapped up in that being their identity that anything that threatens their identity, they will summarily dismiss, even if it's absolutely false what they believe. They will believe the falsehood and cede their values, even to the things they know are not right, because they don't want to lose who they have connected to as a salient group. And they do basically a cost-benefit analysis. Am I willing, just to let folks know I've changed my mind, am I willing to lose my friends, my family, my church, or religious community? Am I willing to sacrifice that because I've identified with that's who I am, not just what I do? And many people will say, I'm not giving all that up, and they stay.
When you say they stay in whatever that family or group is that they found online that may be espousing hateful language or behavior?
Because of the need to belong. There's such a powerful need. Anthropology was told us forever that the need to belong, and Maslowian hierarchy of needs, there's a belonging need. And when that need gets met on a very deep level, and we don't even know what all these pre-written narratives are these young people have gone through and how they've been raised and what they've been exposed to, but when they get to the place where that becomes what they identify with and who they are, it's very difficult to break that. And that's a result of the online toxicity and ecosystem that they've hooked into. There may be some aberrations and changes, they may go outside of it, but they always come back to the core because that is how they see themselves.
It's interesting because I think it's the same search for belonging, right? Like in our community, if you don't have that, if you don't have those relationships and connections, and there's a place for that online, then it's easy to suck you in, and that could be for hateful things, but also be for good things.
I think it was intended to be good. I'm being generous.
Yeah.
We have some experts who say that's not true. But I think the intentionality was connectivity, and I think it was a good thing. But then, when capitalism does its thing, then it's about the dollars. And then when it's about the dollars, how do you see that in terms of your values? And I think we've seen a lot of that, where it's about the money. And I'm sure we'll hear tonight, the algorithms and so forth, which are basically mirrors. People don't realize that they are mirrors, a reflection of what you want. But we have to be careful that we don't get sucked into things that dehumanize us and disconnect us and cause us to see people not just as a person with a difference of opinion, but as an enemy, as an adversary. It just totally rips the fabric of the human family, and that's why we are where we are, where people can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas dinner, whatever the case may be, and not bring up politics.
I want to hold this idea of our attention as commodity, right? That we are fed information. As our resident expert on social media, Charmaine, can you help level set for us how this works online?
Yeah, well, going off of what Reverend Newman is speaking about, the purpose of the platform, maybe there was an intentionality in connecting people and building these communities, but the purpose of the platform, the corporation, is to hold your attention on the platform and ensure that you stay on that platform as long as possible. And so they're using your values, your interests, and your behavior to drive what type of content you see so that you'll stay on. One of the most effective types of content to put out there is rage bait content, because it is going to get you to engage so quickly, and you're probably going to go real deep into that conversation that triggered you and made you upset. There's an equally powerful emotion out there that triggers people, which is joy, which is why we also have that joke about people who just scroll cat videos endlessly. And so I think as communicators, we have a responsibility to decide, what as communicators and consumers, what type of content are we putting out there? What type of content are we allowing to obtain our attention? Because if you're there rage bait scrolling all day, you are telling Meta, Instagram, TikTok, this is the type of content we want to see more of.
Yes.
I mean, I could prompt you with a question, but I have a feeling, you know, as a social media influencer, we have to push play on the video feed. Tell us more about what it's like to interact in the social media space. It's like part of your day to day, all the time. Are we recording?
Speaking of day to day and all the time, this is a reflection of having a busy life filled with children and lunches and a sick child at home tonight. Otherwise, my wife would be here. And still trying to create content, and it's not easy. So I've given up a lot of perfectionism, and I've just said, let's just do it and let the audience tell me what's good and what they react to. Maybe we'll get into some of this about content creation and stuff, but that's what this is for, multitasking here. So in case I say something brilliant, there's a very low chance of that, but if I do, then it's at least captured on video. But I find myself in this environment where, you know, I see the polarization, and it turns out I found a graduate program many years ago about social polarization. I didn't know that sort of thing existed, and so I've studied it for a long time, and I've actually come to content creation and social media by way of social change and social cohesion and a desire to bring people together. That was always my background and my training, and I've gotten into social media not because I love it or not because I want to be the next influencer, but because I understand the power of the tool that we have in front of us, and I'm trying to get myself really good at it so that I can make some kind of positive contribution in this. So I don't know what.
Why have you chosen this as your path?
I like it. I think back to the scrolling. There are little hits of dopamine that I get when I finish something. When I get something to say what I want it to say, and it's quick and it's understandable and somebody can get it. That's a little hit of dopamine because it's a way to communicate in a way that people can actually receive it. But the bigger reason is just because it's always been who I am, but I also recognize the opportunity in front of us. And you may hear this theme from me multiple times tonight, but I really want to give everybody a call to action that social media is not as hard as you think. We talk about it as this thing, this ominous thing and this force that we have to reckon with, and it's so confusing and it's all powerful but it's just a reflection of us. It's just the next iteration of technology, and it's easier than you think it is. And so if you have any, I don't have to say if, all of us have something special that we can offer to others in a positive way to build stronger communities across lines of division. And if we're actually savvy at this stuff, not just making videos, but AI, don't hear AI and say, oh no, a big new thing I don't understand. No. It's an opportunity. These are opportunities for bridge builders, not just the trolls.
Speaking of trolls, it's hard sometimes, I think, to navigate online and social media when you see things that are either incorrect or inflammatory. It's like you feel compelled to go in and make a comment or retweet or reshare. And sometimes it feels like that's not going anywhere. Maybe it's, you're not getting a lot of likes, or maybe it's just your friends and family. And I don't know that we really consider how many people or how long your information can live and who can access that information. There's not a real, there's a responsibility that we don't take ownership of when we are passively commenting or resharing or retweeting. And I'm curious how you think we can take more responsibility. Not that we shouldn't have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, But what are the implications of that as we navigate the social sphere?
Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we receive a lot of hateful comments occasionally when we are doing campaigns related to political issues. So I've talked about a campaign we're doing around the One Big Beautiful Bill, the potential impacts of that bill, and how people can prepare for the impact. So the campaign literally says just contact your marketplace navigator, contact your Shine counselor if you think that you may feel the impacts of this. And we're receiving such hateful comments from folks who just completely deny the information, despite the fact that the sections of the bill are cited in the post, in the graphic, in the video, and everything we're doing. And so that's a real challenge because it's not one person, it's many hundreds of people per day. There are, of course, people who do jump in and say, no, these are the facts, or actually this is coming to affect my community. We are, we've had a consultant chime in that they're consulting hospitals on how to deal with the bill. So there are impacts coming. People do need to prepare. But folks that are isolated in this world that they've created by denying facts are surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people who also deny the facts. And so when you think about how do you conduct research, a lot of us were taught you go to 3 primary sources, maybe some secondary sources. Is 3 to 5 sources enough today to verify information? And are we asking too much of the general community really to do that on all of the information they receive? So it's definitely a challenge in terms of how do we produce, how do we validate the information that we're seeing, and what do we do about the trolls? Because right now all we do is ban if they violate the terms of service of the platform. You don't have freedom of speech on the platform. You have terms of service speech. So you can ban them, you can say this content is not interesting to me, but those folks will continue to operate in their echo chamber and accumulate support.
Well, what I was going to say was that getting 2 or 3 sources, 4 or 5 sources, if those are not a cross-section, if you're getting them from basically the same thought processes, then you're not really learning much. People are just basically reinforcing what they already think. And it doesn't surprise me that you can cite actually from the document, from the bill, and people just, again, summarily dismiss it because their tribe is behind the bill and wants to see the bill go forward or has seen the bill go forward. And therefore they feel anything that attacks that, again, their identity is so tied to it. They believe you're attacking them, not just the bill. They have personalized it. And that's why it is so, in my view, so dangerous when people can't separate the virtual world from their everyday lives. For some people, it has become their world. It is their existence. It now becomes their raison d'etre. I mean, that's the reason why they, wake up in the morning so they can get online and live that online life. And we can literally see that, yes, we have freedom of speech, but the First Amendment has been weaponized against us because we have freedom of speech. That, people can influence elections through social media because of our freedom of speech. Whereas you won't see the same kind of stuff happening in countries where there's not freedom of speech. The folks will never see it. So that's a big part of the problem here, that people have access to so much information. And we have a permission structure now to be discourteous. A permission structure from the top. Who should be setting the examples of it's okay to troll people. So when people think there's a permission structure, then they feel they have no guardrails on what they can say, and there's an expectation by the group that if they don't go hard enough, they're going to say, oh, you're getting weak, or now you're becoming a sheep. And all those derogatory things that get attached to them, that attach their personhood, and they make sure they get back in the fold. So there's a lot of psychodynamics to this, and I hate to keep bringing it up, but it's the truth. There's a lot of psychodynamics to this. And people don't want to lose their identity. And they will do anything to hold on to it. Even if the identity is toxic, they will do it. Even if in their most quiet and poignant self-reflective moments say, I know that that's not right. They will keep it to themselves because they don't want to lose the group.
Please.
Oh, I was just going to say, by the way, can I get some oxytocin here? Just to tap you on the shoulder.
It works.
Get some real human contact.
It works.
I didn't ask you guys before, but can I turn this on you when you're talking?
Yeah.
I'm worried about the battery running out, so I haven't.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I've been doing it too.
okay. What was it? So what I wanted to say was when you said the last thing you said, I forgot what it was, but my general point was that it's a double-edged sword and an opportunity.
Yeah.
When trolls feel like, or people, let's call them people, feel like they can hide behind anonymity and throw bombs because, yes, it's hurtful, yes, it's counterproductive, but it gives us a glimpse into what people are actually thinking. And that's valuable. If anybody is interested in social movements or building narratives in a positive direction or disproving false narratives, you have to know what's going on inside people's minds. That's what it was. You said people have something in their mind that we don't even know the impact that they're thinking about. But this is an opportunity to learn what's actually in their mind because they forget themselves. And that's another advantage, depending on how you see it, because then you can really understand, oh, I'm seeing a lot of people talk about, this, I wouldn't have thought that. And if there was more personal, direct communication, they wouldn't say that sort of thing, because maybe they're embarrassed or they don't think it's right or they question themselves. So it's really valuable, and I want to see that as an opportunity. But it's also an opportunity for those folks in the room, I'm sure there are a lot, who believe in constructive, effective communication. Hello, OneJax, what? And because there's a way to model this in responding to comments. And so I learned all that stuff, and I actually make it a thing to, when I get a very negative comment, to respond I try to go put myself in what I've learned in therapy. Okay, I'm listening, I'm mirroring, I'm repeating what they said so they know that they've been heard. I'm validating what is logical about what they're saying, even though I disagree with it, even though I think their conclusion is way off. I do see the logic that they're using, and that's valid, and I empathize with how they must be feeling. You would not believe how many trolls I've turned into fans just by the way we engage with them, because they don't expect that. They're expecting a horrible reaction. That's why they wanted to do that. They're expressing emotion. But if you say, actually, I think I understand why you're saying that, and that makes a lot of sense, and interact with them on an emotional level, you can really change a lot. So there's a lot of deep dynamics in engaging people digitally that we can't even necessarily do in real life. So that's that theme again. This is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for bridge builders.
I would agree with that. There are a lot of folks who just want to engage. They do put their question out there just to ask the question. They want more information. But there are folks out there who are not interested in that activity as well. They're only interested in inciting violence. They live for this emotional response and to just continue the argument so they can show off their 25 different names they know how to use to insult a Democrat, or their 25 different names they know how to insult a Republican. And those folks are out there as well. They don't want to have constructive conversations, and so I still think it is important to ban and report those people because it allows the constructive conversations to shine. So I agree with what you said, but maybe a both and approach is necessary.
If you think for a moment of people who wind up in that space, if you could kind of reverse engineer their lives and see perhaps as they grew up, there was a lack of validation, a lack of approval, a lack of being seen and being heard. And then all of a sudden, there is a community that hears me, sees me, that feels what I feel. And their dopamine hit comes from the connectivity to that toxic group. And now that they're in that space, they're like all out, because this is where they get their sense of approval and validation from. So even, I'm going back to what you were about to say a second ago, is that I was a Star Wars fan. And so, any other, I guess not.
Nerds, you know.
And it's like when they first, fire on you, the shields are up. But then what happens is, by the way you respond back to them, well, I think that there's validity to what you're saying, then the shields start coming down. And then you can begin to penetrate the defenses. Yeah, you can. But that takes a lot of emotional maturity to do that. And I'm not so sure that's something a lot of people can really do. It takes a lot of practice, because we like to react before we respond.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so easy to do online in particular, when we're talking about reacting, is just the repost or the reshare, right? We've done no research on whether or not that is true, the information is true. We've done no research about who the person is who shared the information to start with, what their character is, or whether or not they're a reliable source. We just passively engage in this content and sharing content. One of the things I've tried to share with folks that I come in contact with, I ask them, like, if you can't put some context around why you're sharing the thing that you're sharing, maybe you shouldn't share it, right? We have a responsibility to be thoughtful, to stop and think about why we're engaging with this material, what we want to come of it. But I don't think people generally accept that level of responsibility, and it's a lost power that we really have. It seems like maybe the platform is just our neighbors, just our family, just our, the people we went to high school with, class of 19, whatever.
19 is enough.
But there are people watching, and it spreads, right?
Absolutely. One of the things that's most concerning to me is that we lost the centrality of what we center ourselves around as a community. We've become so siloed. I remember growing up that there was a certain ethos that we all connected to, a certain kind of commonality, in terms of shared humanity, that we all kind of tapped into. That was kind of a governing principle, the way my family, we were raised. That's basically like gone now. No one cares that they are basically ripping the social fabric that keeps us together as a society. And I'm saying no one, and that's a very big term, but I think you get my drift. That's missing today. Caring about what happens to this nation. It's almost as if, in fact, one of the reasons why I think people use the unfortunate phrase of civil war is that they're saying we don't care about the rest of y'all. All we care about is our group and what our values are and what our subset of principles are. And we don't really care if we lose the rest of you. I mean, you even have people in Washington talking about seceding from the Union again. And so social media can be opportunistic in terms of a positive way, John. I agree with you. But I think at the same time, if we just had, this is going to be controversial, I'm so sorry. We lost 3,000 people in 9/11. And we came together as a country. We lost 1 million in COVID, and we fell apart. What was the difference? Leadership. Leadership makes a difference. When you can set a tone. I didn't agree with everything President Bush did. I've always been a damn. But I do know how to speak Republican. Bilingual. But the common good, the fabric of being, this is our nation. We've been wounded. Now, we can certainly go down the rabbit hole of what happened afterwards in Iraq and Afghanistan and all that, right? That's another conversation. But we came together as a country. Then we fell apart as a country over COVID, and we're still dealing with that division as a cultural lag from that. And I think that might be really where the fundamental split came into the country that we haven't healed from. And this is maybe just a progression of that split that we're living through right now.
Yeah, smartphones came into the picture too after 9/11. Social media certainly wasn't on the scene in the way that it is now or the way that it was during COVID, right? The opportunity to share information or misinformation, facts or mistruths, really proliferated. And I think that became a real kind of dividing point in time. We are going to turn this conversation over to these fine folks in just a few minutes. Do we have any thoughts about what this looks like, what our responsibility should be, how we can hold on to our humanity? You've already shared some, but I'll give you each a final word. What advice do we have for community, for our community, as we work to find common ground, to be neighbors? How do we hold it together here?
So from the perspective of an advertising agency, a social media agency that is paid to put out targeted messages, I would encourage folks to really check the facts, make sure that what you're putting out there is real. Don't repost things that look real just because you think they're funny. Other people are seeing that. And so just kind of being mindful of what type of feed am I curating for my friends, my family, their friends and family, because everybody's going to see that. You can also review your privacy settings if if you have concerns. That's kind of a basic thing that you can do. But I would really love to see everyone in this room putting out positive stories on social media, moments that connected us, things that happened in the real world, and inviting folks to sort of join in. Back to what Reverend Newman said about the mentality of folks who make their lives online only. They may not feel like they can step outside of that space and join the community because of things that they have put out there. So I think understanding forgiveness and coming together with the intention of being respectful and being united is just really, really important. And understanding that advertisers take advantage of your emotional response. I mean, we study that psychology. We're looking at how do you make folks react quickly. We don't want them to think too much before they spend out all their money. And so that's being created intentionally. And so just know that folks are out there trying to manipulate you. When you're looking at your screen, don't allow it.
I would say zoom out a little bit and remember that there have been many periods of great change, and change is scary. When you're not sure what's going to happen, you're not sure what direction things are going to go in, and it's normal. Don't beat yourself up or anyone else for feeling overwhelmed by the threats, because they are real. But realize that this, I want to detach everyone's mindset from, oh no, this is a big problem, what do we do, to look at this incredible chance we have that we never had before. It wasn't that long ago that only large companies could afford to put widespread messages. The social media has even changed in the last few years, such that before, when it was actual true social media, however many followers you had, you would post something, a certain number of them would see it, but now it's all interest-based. You can open an account tonight and post something poignant and get 1 million views with no followers. That's the way all the platforms are now. I mean, that's not something that was ever possible for any of us before, and it is now. So I would say meet this moment with a wide perspective be okay and be okay with yourself that it's scary, but then gather yourself and get to work, because there's bridge builders in this room, and there's a lot to offer, and there's a lot to do.
Actually, finally, I would just say this in conclusion of this segment. Recognize your own agency and power you have, which is the power of words. Words really matter. If you look at, and we see oftentimes, and unfortunately so, young people who have, because of social media, who've been bullied and picked on, body shamed because of sexual identity, and wind up taking their own lives. We cannot become comfortable with that being just another person gone. But if you reverse engineer what happened before they took their life, what had been said to them, what had they seen, what had been texted to them, and the cumulative impact of all of that negativity took them to a place where they concluded, my life is not only not worth living, it's not worth even having. And they decided that much pain, the only way to get out of it was to end it by taking their own lives. Words did that. There may be other things that go into the equation as well, but words did that. Every time we end a conflict, as we're trying to do in Ukraine and trying to do in the Middle East, they will get around a peace table because words matter. No one just decides to, stop dropping bombs. There's some documents being signed because words matter. So what if someone had said to that child who was hurting, whose lights had gone out but nobody was paying attention, and said, but you really do matter. And you matter to me. Just as that life could have been taken, that life could have been spared by the power of our own agency. Use it. That's what I would say. Because you can literally save a life.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. All right. We are going to turn this conversation over to you all. We want to make sure that this is an opportunity for you to share your own experiences and ideas for how you can engage in being more constructive online. How do we see things that upset us, agree to disagree? How do we stand up for people that maybe are unseen? How do we take responsibility for our own feeds and curate our online and social media experience for us, and how can we impact that for other people? In order to do that, we're going to have some ground rules for conversation. There they are. Perfect. Thank you. I don't have a clicker tonight. They know better than to give me one of those. I'm going to move through these 10 ground rules or conversation commitments. Quickly, I just want to make sure that we highlight them. And then you have packets on your table. These conversation commitments are on the table, as well as some discussion prompts and conversation rules. So first and foremost, we have put these conversation commitments together using Gracious Space. If you were with us last year, we used Gracious Space. This year, we're also incorporating the invitation from Simon Greer. OneJax is working on a program called Bridging the Gap, and we wanted to incorporate some of that work here. And so you'll see 10 commitments that we're asking for you to respect as you move through the evening. Prioritize what matters to other people. So even if your perspective differs, even if your experience differs, give them some priority as they are sharing with you. Listen with intention. So refrain from any interruption and truly take it in. Reflect on what they're sharing. Ask open-ended questions and cultivate that curiosity. Remember that we are looking to understand, not just to share our own story or win an argument. We want to embrace diverse viewpoints, of course, especially those that are different from yours. Really think about it and take it in. We want to promote equal participation. So around the table, if there's somebody who's maybe not chiming in as much, we invite you to challenge the status quo. Ask the quieter individual to share, what do you think about this? Obviously use respectful language, and then not only are you going to approach the conversation with good intention, but let's assume that everybody else at the table is also approaching the conversation with good intentions. Respect confidentiality, recognize the potential of these conversations to be both the teacher and a learner, so it goes both ways in any given conversation, and then certainly strive to find common ground and extend empathy as we uphold respect and kindness. There are roles at your table. I'm going to encourage you to choose a role. So there are leading roles and supporting roles, depending on how many people are at your table. We will take about 45 minutes for conversation, and then we'll do a little share out. So keep that in mind as you're discussing, and then we'll wrap up for the night. Thank you all so much for being here, and we will let you chat. Thank you to my guests.